Welcome to Living Once Twice, a lifestyle design and personal adventure podcast. My name is Justin. Come with me as I'm here to help you chart your course for creating the fulfilling life you desire. Join me as every Wednesday we'll dive into the inspiring guest stories, remarkable science, and useful strategies to help you create the momentum you need to take action towards designing your dream life. Remember, your dream life is waiting for you. It's time to go for it. You deserve it. Greetings all, and welcome to Living Once Twice. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I'm very excited to bring on today's guest, Mr. Harvey Mills. Harvey is a life coach, basketball coach, and founder of Imperfect Outlets, and also the host of the Mills Pills podcast, which y'all all have to check out, and so much more. Harvey, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing wonderful, Justin, and thank you for having me. I really appreciate this opportunity to speak with you all.
Definitely. And likewise, man. Now, before we dive into your story and the great insights that you have to share with our listeners, I have to give the people, as always, some context. Harvey and I, we met back in the fall as a part of Create the Space, Denzel Herrera Davis's platform. And now we've just been connected across the board, from everything from Restoring the King to this is just a genuine brother that I got so much love, respect, and appreciation for. And I'm just excited, Harvey, to have you in for this conversation today.
I appreciate that, man. It's been a joy to just be around you and be around some healthy men that share experiences like mine and have you all in my corner for this time that we have met. So, like I said, very thankful to be here.
And that's something we are definitely going to talk about, is the conversations that we've opened up, especially around male vulnerability. But take us back, Harvey. Can you just share with our listeners in terms of who you are, where you're from, and your transition into the real world was like, into what you're doing now?
Okay, so I'm originally from Richmond, Virginia. I'm a life coach, basketball coach, and I would like to say that I'm a constant seeker of more understanding and just pretty passionate about helping others. And throughout my journey, I've realized that the way that I can help others is starting off by helping myself first and kind of understanding myself on a deeper level. So for me, kind of coming out of school, I feel like as I got thrown into the real world, as you want to call it, I felt like school really didn't prepare me that well for life. And my immediate family seemed somewhat small, or a small part of my life in the totality of consciousness. I don't know if I was aware of that from the beginning, but I know that's something that was in my heart that I was trying to figure out. And I've gotten to a place now where I can understand things in a different way, accept the I don't knows as much, and really kind of dive into constantly seeking understanding for myself and being able to truly help others through my sense of being at peace. But yeah, when I went to Virginia State, when I first got out of high school, going into college, played a little basketball. That was fun. Ended up going to St. Louis Community College, played basketball for a year, and life kind of hit me hard around the 21, 22 age, where I was diagnosed with cancer. And that really shifted the paradigm for me. It really opened me up to a different understanding. I remember that day vividly because I remember the doctor diagnosing me. And the first thing I thought was like, so could I die? And that kind of woke me up because for the first moment in my life, material things had no bearing on me. I don't know if it was just for a quick couple of days or just for that moment, but I literally felt the feeling inside of me of like going home and just throwing all of my money out the window or something like that. I just felt that type of energy because it was like, now I got to live different. Mm-hmm. And I think the fear of the unknown is the biggest fear, right? So just being in that unknown space was my holdback. But as I got more familiar with what I was going through and understanding of it, I was able to see, okay, like this is a transition in my life. I'm not a Superman, so anything can happen to me, like we kind of feel like we're invincible when we're young. But that it really clicked on a switch for me that said, okay, like nothing's guaranteed. Time could be limited. I can't guarantee tomorrow. That's when that really started to sink into me when I got diagnosed. That was a turning point in my life, man. That really opened me up to really starting to ask myself questions that I really needed to answer. And it's been a long journey, but that was definitely the start of it.
Wow. Wow. And there's so many questions I have about that. And I appreciate you opening up and sharing your journey with something that is so, that's a tough thing to grapple with, is once again, your morality, your mortality there. And you talked about it being such a turning point for you.
Mhm.
So where were you headed before that happened? And then after that happened, how did it switch you into a different route?
I want to say like I really didn't have a direction, but when you're young, you kind of feel like you're starting to get things figured out until you continue to age and realize, man, the more I live, the more I realize that there's more to learn, right?
Mhm.
So I think from the start, I was more of like, okay, like I'm getting older, I'm figuring this thing out, like everything's starting to come together. And that really just threw a much monkey wrench in the game. The
Mhm.
cancer just really was like, okay, you don't have it figured out. Here's something new. Deal with that. And I don't know if your time is limited or not. So, when you go into that space, you have to ask different questions. When I was more in my invincible state, I could ask myself more daring questions where when I was in this state of confusion and misunderstanding, I really had to dive into that self-seeking and that self-exploration.
And that's kind of where I want to go, Harvey, is that deep dive of asking yourself those questions. Because once again, you have this pivotal change that happens in your life. And you talked about how you started to have to ask yourself questions, some intimate questions. So, what were some of those questions, and how did those answers then get you in a direction of going into this life coaching route?
I think I started to really ask questions around like what I believed, what was right and wrong, what was the more that I was seeking. I would ask myself things like, I didn't plan this. So, like, what turning point is this in my life? Like, I really had those questions. And then the biggest question I asked was, like I said, like, is my time more limited than I thought it was? And those questions just kind of make you dive into yourself and really take a different perspective on life. Like I said, you get invincible and you almost feel like you'll live forever. But
Mhm.
that day kind of reminded me that we all have our shelf life.
Mhm.
And now I might have to kick in gear and find some direction or find some purpose or tap into passion and stop just kind of walking through this life like a zombie. I had really gotten into a space where I was like in a stalemate. It's like, I don't know where I'm going here. Things are just happening. So I'm just kind of like along for the ride. And that day, I think I wanted to take more control of whatever time I had. But that control started with understanding my mind, which I realized that a lot of the information that I had taken in my life had been given to me. It wasn't information that like I had deciphered for myself. So
Wow.
like that scared me,
Mhm.
honestly, man, because it's like if my time is limited, how much time would I have to go into this stuff, to really dive into my mind and understand myself? So I can start to realize what it means for me to be at peace, what it means for me to really not have expectations of others and be okay with the transition points and the process and pace in which other people are going. Because ultimately, I think since day one in my life, I've always just been like, very good with connections with people, communication with people, and I've always wanted to help. But I think, like I said, with cancer, it kicked into another gear because it was like my purpose has to be beyond me,
Mhm.
and because if it's just people die every day,
Mhm.
so if like if I was to die, like what would I have left, and have I done anything that could impact somebody very positive way? And now, like I said, that these last what is it, 7 years have been really honing into those questions and diving in. And I think recently I've gotten to a place where I realized that right and wrong is really just subjective to the time. And our nature as human beings is to continue to seek. And I've been doing exactly what my nature is. But in the sense of that, I've been looking for some conclusions to give to others. And I think through this life coaching journey, I found out that there's really no conclusion to give to others because the total consciousness really has no conclusivity. It's just about people understanding their process and their journey and being willing to accept what their process is. And I think I want to put that on notice. I wanted to start to put that on notice for the lifestyle that I was living.
Wow. Once again, this is just such a rich experience that you shared in terms of your journey and what you were seeking. And to go back to something you mentioned, it sounded like you were talking about like you knew because time is limited for all of us, you wanted to find your purpose and you want to tap into that. And you were yearning for something. Did you feel that you could discover that where you were? Because once again, you said you were out in Virginia in the Midwest. Or did you have to get outside of that box to even find and tap into that purpose even more that you were yearning for and seeking?
So it's funny because in 2010, I moved to St. Louis. And in St. Louis, so what happened was like my aunt invited me out there for a couple of weeks. And it was because like I just had a lot of mess going on in Virginia. And after she invited me out there, I guess after the fear of feeling like I was just leaving my friends, right? I got out there and I'm like, okay, this is not bad. Like I could be somewhere else. Like Virginia doesn't need me. But throughout that journey, what happened was like my growth magnified way more than my experiences had been in Virginia. And I think the reason for that was being in a nuanced space, having to expose myself in a different way, put myself out there, being uncomfortable and having to do something different. And I think another thing I realized in those moments in being in St. Louis was that I had been in my comfort zone all my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I had found the sweet spot in that comfort zone, but what was that really doing for me, right? Is that really helping me? Because I grow the most when I'm uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I grow the most when I'm in predicaments that I'm not familiar with and I have to think past what I thought before. So that just opened the range. But once again, like I was young and I was still in the process of this journey. So I wouldn't have explained it like I do today. But I definitely felt a shift that was like, you kind of got to get away to really feel something different. And that was a switch for me too that kind of kicked in. And then this is what really stuck with me when I got back to Virginia. My friends, man, like my friends that had been there the 5 years that I had been in St. Louis, they were kind of still the same. And when I got back, I was kind of immature. My ego was in the way and I felt something wrong with that. I felt like, what are y'all doing? And not realizing that the nature of this is that their situation has been limited and you stepped outside of your box. So do you not expect to bring some different outlook? But at the time I was so like, what is going on here? Like my friends ain't really, these ain't the same friends I left. I had to go through that self-exploration too of understanding how much change had gone on in me
Mm-hmm.
and how much the result of some people not moving out of their environments didn't change their circumstance. They were still doing a lot of the same thing. Another wake up call for me, right? But yeah, getting out of my comfort zone is really what it stands out to me to be something that makes me, even though in the moment you're kind of like, oh, you feel like it's so much. But that's where you kind of got to grind those gears the most. That's where self exploration becomes an expanded exercise, is in that space of like, I don't know what to do, but I want to figure something out. So let me figure something out. And that rung bells to me. That definitely rung bells to me.
And I love how you talk about getting outside your comfort zone and leaning into the unknown, the uncomfortable. And something I've heard you say is that I don't know, like answering that question or exploring that question. Why can saying I don't know be so powerful?
So I listen to, we've talked about this before, but I listen to this guru a lot, Sadhguru, and he talks about how really even belief can stop us from the greatest of our possibilities. And he really started to explain what belief was, right? So he explained it very simple. He said, when you look at your two hands, you don't look at your two hands and say, I believe I have two hands. You look at them and say, I have two hands, because there's nothing to believe there. So knowing and believing are two different things.
Mm-hmm.
But the opposite of knowing is not knowing. And if we're in between, then there's something there that we don't know. And I think something that's really resonated with me lately through my journey and through me kind of understanding myself is that my being able to say, I don't know, especially in a society like this, it may be one of the harder things to do, but the possibilities are endless when you allow yourself to feel the weight of not knowing something. of not having the ego in the way to feel like, okay, well, I figured this out. I figured that out. Because there's so much universe to explore for us to really have it figured out. And we're all a part of this consciousness together. So in order to really figure everything out, we really got to kind of encounter everybody, right? We really got to pass everybody. That stood out to me when he said that, because it was like, man, how much stuff do I believe? And how much have my beliefs really stopped me from going further in a direction or further in my seeking journey? And that's why I made it a point in the beginning when you asked me who I was. The first thing I said was I'm a constant seeker of understanding, because I'm not even seeking an answer. I'm just constantly seeking what I don't know, which is a constant. The constant in this universe is I don't know. I'm learning things every day to understand myself, but I really don't know. I can believe some things, but the things I know, I know. And the things I don't, I don't. So like if I take that holistic approach on things, then now I can open up the possibilities to not have some engineered thought about something, but go into it free and whole and allow things to happen to me based off me knowing that I don't know. I think that's a superpower. That's a superpower.
And I feel like it so is, and it's something that I've learned and got to talk and connect with you on, that aspect of unlearning so much programming that we get from our education system and our communities and the families that we grow up. But hearing you talk about just that power of just exploring or curiosity and leaning into that, and how liberating and free that could be, that's actually something I want to go into, because it does take for you, and you mentioned this as well, to let go of your ego, or to let go of that sense of knowing, and to really open yourself up to be vulnerable and self-explore. So for you, as I know this is one of the areas that you're passionate about, why do you think for people, and in particular even just men, those who identify as men, struggle with that self-reflection piece of letting go of the ego, just exploring the curiosity and being open to that? Because many of us struggle with that in the first place, of just releasing the unknown or controlling the unknown.
I think naturally men in this society have a hard time with dealing with emotions. And what stands out to me is that like self-reflection starts with vivid sense of memory, right? And anything you have a memory of, you have an emotional connection to. That's the reason you're remembering. But a lot of times I know for me, and I'll speak directly to me personally. My therapist even told me, she said, it's funny because you'll talk around how you feel, but you won't exactly say it. And I think a lot of men struggle with dealing with their emotions because they don't want to go through feeling sad or feeling like they're not a man. But I think in this society, we really don't define that well. We don't define what it means to really be who we are, even individually. And I think a lot of our men, like I said, they struggle with this is because to be a man in this society on a skeletal scale means to not have these emotions subconsciously. But what it means to me in the life coaching space is to be able to surface those emotions and understand them in every way so that you can become at peace with them. And I think that's something that we neglect by having this predetermined definition of what it means to be a man, instead of really diving into what it means to be who we are and seeing if that means that we are the man that we want to be, or if we are defining this the right way. And in conclusivity of things, that definition continues to be added on to if we're in that constant seeking of understanding, right? And not having this conclusion, we realize that it's really no endpoint. We're just continuing to gather information. But yeah, we don't like to really deal with our emotions because it could come with tears. It could come with sadness. It could come with mad. But in order to understand mad, you got to go through mad. So I think that's the hesitancy for men, because a lot of us want to stay in our comfort space where we figured some of these things out and don't want to deal with what we haven't figured out. And the reality is most things in life we haven't figured out. So what are we going to go out and get some understanding of it? Not even figure it out, just get some understanding of it. And when are we going to allow ourselves to go through and feel if we ever have to get emotional about something, or are ready to get happy or be sad or whatever that emotion that builds up in us in. And to take it a step further, that's a state of being, right? So we don't like to deal with the fact that our state of being actually comes from us. But a lot of times, because we don't know our manual well, we don't know ourself well, we feel like the emotions derive from other people giving them to us. And they don't. If you're mad, it starts with you. And I don't think a
Mm.
lot of men really want to accept that. If you're frustrated, if you're happy, if you're sad, whatever emotion that you have, that state of being is within you already. So you've decided to exert that. You've chosen to exert that. I mean, I think, like I said, I think men have a real hesitancy with dealing with their emotional selves because that doesn't really line up with being a man in the society, quote unquote. But I think through this journey of life coaching and health and wellness, we're redefining that. I'll give you an example on the Create the Space platform when we do the To Me For You stories of exploration from the heart. The strongest moment I've seen with men is when one man spoke up about their sexual abuse in a vulnerable way. And then 4 or 5 other men in the room, I may have been, 12 to 15 men, 4 to 5 other men in the room were like, yeah, that's happened to me too. And the conversation just went. And that to me is like, I think about how many people, especially men, wouldn't want to talk about that. But to feel the safety to share that vulnerability and let that off you, I think that's healing for anybody. And we don't see it like that before we do it. But after it happens, we actually get to move on from it. We get to be like, okay, I let that off of me. I dealt with that. And I let people understand that I dealt with that. Some other people understood it with me and they dealt with it. So I'm not really alone in this. And now I can really say, okay, well, I can either go into more of the self exploration of it or I can let it off me so that I can move on to explore other things.
Mm. And Harvey, that is powerful. Everything that you talked about as males and just as human beings, being able to start to learn ourselves, learn our own manuals, because oftentimes, and we've talked about this on the show, we're handed a script that's already pre-written for us. Like you said, this is what you're supposed to do as a male identifying human being. This is what you're supposed to do as a female identifying being. And it's all written for you. But to really step back from that and understand who you are just as a person and human being is critical and crucial. And I was hoping that you could talk more about the life coaching versus traditional therapy. How can life coaching help someone who is ready to become more conscious, to understand their manual in terms of getting in tune with their authentic self and really starting to be able to free themselves from what's holding them back?
Yeah, well, therapy is literally more clinical based, and you have to watch your verbiage when you talk about therapists, psychologists, people that are in that profession. But as a life coach, I think our responsibility is more taking you through the guiding space or the walk of you defining things for yourself by just really asking open ended questions and allowing you to go through that journey. And ours is more experience based as well. Like I said, we're not clinicians, so we're not diagnosing you. We're literally there to help you go through your process and heal just through understanding yourself. And that's something I think that's separate from taking medicine and certain processes where we're really putting that work on you and just being a friend, more of a friend or a counterpart that holds you accountable to being healthy than allowing you to just be your unhealthy self or pointing those things out. So, we're like an accountability partner. We're more of a friend that's there to be healthy with you and challenge your health as well. And I think that's kind of the separation where we don't have as many boundaries, I'll say, with life coaching. It's really catered to a person deciding who's best for them. It's like really adding another person to your community that's not taking these societal boundaries and throwing them at you. It's really based off our experience. And I think me personally, as a life coach, I try to dig into the education of that as much as I can, because you can never have too many tools for your clients or for people that are confiding in you to find out information about themselves or to really tap into their mind a little bit more.
And what really sticks out to me with what you were sharing, and I appreciate you clarifying the two,
Mhm.
is the piece of the tools and doing it in community with someone or in community with others, which is something that you've also mentioned throughout our conversation. What has been the role of community in your journey, and anything you want to share with folks out there who have been kind of going this exploration road, maybe by themselves, and maybe
Mhm.
are afraid to open up to others and understanding what kind of value they could get through community in their own self-exploration journey.
I'm gonna be honest, man. In the beginning of my journey, so my mom has 7 sisters and 4 brothers, and my dad has a sister, and I'm actually really big on family. But when I was young, I had this feeling of like my family letting me down because I didn't resonate with the information they were giving me. What I didn't realize that I've kind of come more to in times like this in recent years is that community is actually what you make it. It's who you add to your circle. It's not necessarily what comes with, right? It's not just what's handed to you. It's what you embody, what you bring into you. So what held me back in those times was my community was so limited to the people that like, my family and things like that. And because I looked at my family as my only community and a couple of my friends as my only community, that community was so small in information that I didn't feel like I was getting enough until I started to understand that as I add more people to my space and allow for the possibility of conflict, that's actually where I'll be able to expand my understanding of self. So my community isn't just the bubble around me or the people that I'm connected to. It should be everybody. We just kind of, in this society, we go into our own bubbles to protect ourselves. It's kind of that
Mm.
fear-based thinking. Coming out here to California and really learning, being around more people that aren't necessarily like me, share some experiences that I do, but in the midst of our healthy conversations, I find out it's just as much as they're similar to me, how much they're different than me. I realized that I'm limiting my community. I'm stopping my community. And I didn't realize, like I said, until recently that I was looking at my community as something that was damaging me instead of allowing more people to be a part of my community so that I can take more of those tools and add them to my mind. Because, at the end of the day, you really can't have any expectations of other people. You deal with your controllables and your uncontrollables. I can't control anything outside of me. I can't control my mind,
Mhm.
right? But what I allow to come into so that I can learn is totally up to me. And the less that I allow to come into my space, the less I learn. The more I allow to come in my space, the more I learn.
Yeah, and I'm right there with you. It's been one of the journeys that I've been on with you and the Create the Space Fellows, the Restoring the King Fellows, is just this journey of opening up the world, my mind, and the universe. And you talked about something in the concept of fear-based thinking, Harvey, which
Yeah,
I think is so important because it's also connected to our vulnerability. And you talked about this whole aspect of maybe being fearful to open up or ask yourself these questions or even open up to others because you're nervous about what they might think of you or how they might judge you. So, what would you say to someone who, once again, they want to get outside their comfort zone? Maybe they want to start mining out these questions, but that fear based thinking kicks in and they're just worried about it could be, I won't be viewed as a man if I'm talking about an experience that I went through or talking about my feelings or trauma that I've gone through. What would you say to them once again when it comes to just overcoming that fear-based thinking mentality that does hold so many of us back or hold so many of us from getting outside of our comfort zone?
I would say that life is the present in which we're inserting ourselves, but the thoughts are conjured up imagination. And what we see about thoughts is that they're super powerful. Anything that can stop you from doing something that you haven't seen before is super powerful. So if you can see that power on the end of fear, you can translate that power over to manifestation and say, because I was listening to a life coaching segment, it talked about how beliefs create thoughts, thoughts create feelings, feelings create behaviors, behaviors become or create results. But what creates beliefs? And that what creates those beliefs is our sense of programming. So a lot of our fear has to do with our programming, not our actual experience. So what we have to do is start to program ourselves in a different way. And that really means being able to put yourself in the space where you didn't know what would happen, or you thought of the worst things, and allow it to just happen to you. And it really takes you understanding and asking yourself why. The vulnerability piece and the self exploration piece are what stand out in that space, is because, like, the more I dive into myself, the more I can remove whatever fears were just thought, because they're just thought. Like,
Mhm.
some of the things, like, for example, back in the day, we read in our history books about slavery. Even with we know that, like, our DNA with our families and things like that, like, we may be connected to that in a certain way, but we do know today that we don't go through slavery in the same way, and it's not a physical form. But the thought of what our parents have went through and our grandparents went through is oftentimes what holds us back from allowing us to say, okay, well, what is the possibility over here where that might not have been a possibility
Mhm.
before? Those are the things that come into our mind with that fear-based thinking. So I would just tell people, like I said, that fear-based thinking is really, it's just a thought. Living and thinking are two different things,
Yeah,
right?
I've
And
been. Mhm.
I was just gonna say, and to live is to be present. But to indulge yourself in thoughts that haven't happened aren't isn't really being present, isn't allowing yourself to go through what the possibility is. So, fear-based, it takes work, because I think we've been programmed to it, because it has a lot to do with our beliefs and our thoughts and our feelings, right? But that's the importance of what we were talking about before with deprogramming, or realigning yourself, understanding yourself on a deeper level, breaking away from some of those beliefs and just kind of taking them in as information and allowing yourself to be inserted in that space.
Nah, everything that you shared, I'm sure with the listeners resonated. And you talked about fear being just thoughts. And I've brought this up that Les Brown describes fear, that acronym, that it's just false experiences appearing real. So when we think
Yes.
about these thoughts and whatever is the image or the conclusion that our mind draws from it, in reality, a lot of times that's not how things play out. And it's to what you're saying. If we could just get over that, we can really free ourselves to so many other possibilities for our lives, for our fulfillment. So I appreciate you sharing that and going there, Harvey.
Yeah. And I would add this too, Justin. I think my family used to tell me this a lot. They used to say the biggest fear is fear of the unknown, right?
Mm.
So it's like, if I can realize that the fear that I'm setting in my heart is really the unknown space that I don't know, then I can start to rearrange the way I look at the unknown. Is it a possibility, or is it something to be scared of?
Yeah. Damn. Love that. I love that. Speaking of things that have been quotes and things that you share, because you've shared a lot. This next segment is our each one teach one rapid fire questions, Harvey. And I just a couple questions for you. And one that I wanted to ask is what's a book? Because you talked a lot about different people that you followed and videos. What's one book or resource that you recommend for everyone to take advantage of or explore?
I will give you two. One that really helped me on a personal level was a book called The Secret Science of Black Male and Female Sex by a gentleman named T.C. Carrier. And that just takes a read. I mean, I just invite the audience to go in and just check
Mhm.
that out. I don't even want to go into details, but that really just kind of opened me up to getting away from the society fringes and really just kind of focusing in on some of the culture that I'm not as familiar with, some of the cultures that have been here with us before, and allowing us to really realize, who we are in this space. But another book that I read that's more catered to men is The Way of the Superior Man. And I think that's by David Dita. He just really gives you a balance on, it's called Superior Man, but I think it really gives you a balance about understanding yourself as a man. Some of these things that we have in us are nature, and some of these things are to be elevated on. But if we can understand the nature of our circumstance, then we can come to peace with being able to kind of explain ourselves. But those would be two books that I would recommend. And I probably got a nice little bit of books. So like, if I come on here next time, I'll give you another few books, that I've read. But those two really, like, in the last year and a half, those are two books that I read front to back that have
Mm-hmm.
really impacted my life in a way that I never saw coming.
I love it, man. You always stay with the brain food, so I appreciate
Yes,
those
sir.
recommendations. Now, being a life coach, what's the best life or career advice you've received?
Oh, man. Being a life coach, what's the best advice that I've received? Don't take this world so serious. And I don't know is
Mm,
the best thing you could tell yourself. We talked about that before, but I can't emphasize this enough. I cannot tell you how much my beliefs have left me complacent and not allowed me to want to yearn for more understanding. Because it's like I got to figure it out. You believe in God? Okay. It's just God. Okay. But it's like, if we go into what that means, like now we got to start getting into the meat on the bones. So I'll give the audience my own quote. Put some meat on your own bones, or
mm,
bite the meat off your own bones.
mhm.
Don't wait for people to give you the meat on your bones or to give you what you need. Really just take that as information. Allow yourself to embrace the I don't knows of life and go on with your nature as a human being, which is to be human, which is to be a being and to seek what you don't understand.
Man, that was amazing. I love that advice. Now,
Thank you.
we're about to take them to school, and I love asking guests this question. So, when you think about Harvey, all of your years of schooling, what is something that you didn't learn in school about the real world that you believe needs to be taught?
I don't think the mind should be taught first. I believe that the mind should be explored. Like when we come out the womb, the guru I was listening to, he talks about this, but he talks about how in India, for the first 12 years, they don't teach their kids anything.
Mm,
They literally just allow them to embrace who they are. And then, after they get that foundation for themselves and understand that they have a body, but then their mind is working kind of separately, then we can infuse them with information that allows them to decipher what works for them and what doesn't. But that's something I would change in this culture. We're just so quick to teach our kids something that it's like we just want to put them in a space instead of allow them to go through the process of life, get over the hump of life and understanding themselves so that they can start to really give back to the person that they're passionate about and that aligns with their purpose. But yeah, I would definitely kind of restructure our education system to really focus in on the mind and health and wellness first, because I think that's something that's missing in today's culture.
whew, you ain't lying, especially that
Man,
health and wellness piece, brother.
man.
uh, so, the last question I got for you, Harvey, in our rapid fire is: in this season of your journey, what or who are you focused on becoming?
In this season, I'm really just focused on becoming a person that's in alignment with my mind. This year, I'm really making it my business to really work on this being at peace thing. Like I said, I realized that my emotions really start with me,
Mm,
but the things that I've gone through in my life, things outside of me have a hold of the state of being that's within me. And I want to change that paradigm. And I think most of my life I've been feeling the urge to change that paradigm because somebody else shouldn't make you happy when life should make you happy. So I really just want to hone in on becoming, that well, first off, I'm a life coach, but really just honing into, that seeking, that vulnerability, that self-exploration and understanding my mind so I can love people better, loving myself better so I can love others better. That's really what's important to me in this season and throughout life, honestly.
man, I love that. I love that.
Yes,
So
sir.
let's tell the folks what's next for you, Harvey, and where can people go to find out more and learn more about you?
Yeah, so I'm on IG at Imperfect Outlets. I also have my personal link at Three-Way 3 Mills, but that's a personal thing. I also have our Pills podcast, and you also can go check out my website at Imperfect Outlets. That's outlets with a Z.com, where you can go in and check out life coaching services I have, some of the basketball coaching stuff, and just kind of see what my culture is all about, and some of the things that I take with me. And I'm always adding to that space. I'm in the midst of writing a book around balancism and just kind of bringing a sense of balance to everything. That's something that I'm working on. That's another thing I'm working on in this season.
Mm.
But yeah, just kind of staying busy, just making sure that I stay healthy and make health and wellness a part of my everyday life. That's really the biggest thing, because this last year and a half in the health and wellness space has done wonders for the transitions that are happening in my life. And I'm very thankful for the people that I've met and for just going into these very healthy spaces by being in these communities that help me have these conversations of self-exploration and vulnerability. So I'm thankful for that.
Good, good. That's great. And yeah, folks, get online, go to the website, check Harvey out on IG. It's just amazing what you're up to, what you're working on, and what you're creating, the legacy you're leaving the world, and how you're helping other people out there really explore beyond themselves so they could get on this liberation journey and self-actualize into the highest expression of themselves, Harvey. So I just, once again, brother, I'm glad I'm just connected to you because I get to absorb the energy that you're giving off.
Yeah, and I want to say thank you for having me. I know we talk about this personally, but I just want to tell my audience the impact that you have in my life, man. You have not only been a positive energy in my life since day one, but we've talked about this before. You have an energy and a light that's so filling and so loving that it comes off in your aura and in your energy every time we talk. And just something as small as that, especially in my health and wellness journey, means so much to me. And I'm so thankful for the relationship we have. I don't know if the audience knows this much, but we are part of Denzel Herrera Davis business called Create the Space. It's a community of incredible men learning themselves, understanding, going through self-exploration, going through those vulnerabilities, sharing them with each other. And we have grown in ways that you all wouldn't believe, from just being in spaces where we get to understand ourselves and really go through the process of, learning our minds and sharing our experiences with each other. So that relationship with you stemmed from some of those things, but I'm just so thankful to have you in my corner. And ever since we met, it's been a brotherhood. So I'm, like I said, I'm very thankful and I appreciate you having me. And I know that this podcast space for you is going to take off and go, in all kinds of directions. So big ups
Man,
to you, brother. Big
I
ups to you.
appreciate that, man. I appreciate that seriously. And that's been a journey. And you talked so much about the importance of community, and you and I both being transplants from outside of the area, being able to connect and find each other and other men to explore these questions with has just been phenomenal. And
Mm.
it's been healing, and it's been just so much more. So I appreciate you and I appreciate the love. And it's like, yeah, let's just keep that momentum. And as we get more human beings and more men and others out there on this vulnerability ride with us,
Yes, sir.
it'll be great. Cause I feel like a lot of our women counterparts, our female counterparts, they're on this, this train. And more of us men need to understand that, as Harvey's talked about, vulnerability can be such a superpower and a liberating superpower in the aspect of helping you to unlock these questions so you can once again go in and start living a more authentic life and
Authentic
designing it
life.
for yourself.
Oh man, you couldn't have said that better, brother. You couldn't have said that better. I need to put that in my repertoire.
Yo. Well, listen, folks, y'all hang out because after we wrap this up, Harvey's also gonna share this amazing poem that he's wrote. So we'll definitely add that to the episode, and it'll be part of the kind of the bonus after the show. And so what I'll do here is just say, once again, I encourage you all to tap in to Mr. Harvey Mills's work. Get out there. I mean, we talked about it, vulnerability, getting outside your comfort zone, asking yourself that question, why, and keep mining into that why, because there's so much richness and authentic nature in yourself that you will find as you do that and as you open yourself up to the world and to others. And that's what we're making happen here. And you'll get that energy and that guidance from the work and also the podcast that Harvey's got out there, the Mills Pills podcast. So that is it, y'all, for this show. I'd like to thank you for your presence and tuning in today. If you enjoyed this episode, please show your support by sharing the Living Once Twice podcast on IG, LinkedIn, wherever, and leaving us a review on iTunes. reaching out to you all through the time and the space that separates us to say, remember, your dream life is waiting for you. Go for it. You deserve it. Catch you later on Living Once Twice.